Hello everybody, welcome back to another sewing video. Today I'm going to be turning this Noah blouse by me-maade into a dress by adding a simple gathered skirt. So yeah, follow along to learn how to turn basically any top into a dress. I decided to do this today because I realised when I was making this video a few weeks ago that A, I don't wear this top very much anymore, and B, I don't have very many dresses at the moment that I can breastfeed in. So I thought, perfect opportunity to get a bit more life out of this me-maade. I'll also link the pattern for this blouse in the description below if you want to make something very similar, but you can use basically any top to do this. So first up, I'm going to cut my two pattern pieces. It's essentially just two massive rectangles, exactly the same shape and size as each other, one for the front, one for the back. And so you don't need a pattern or anything for this. I'm just going to use the remainder of the fabric that I have from making the top. I have probably just the perfect amount. The width of the fabric is wide enough to be the width of the skirt. It's because it's gathered, it's so forgiving. Just the wider it is, the more gathered and fuller the skirt will be, the less wide it is, the least full and less gathered the skirt will be. So I think this will be probably a good width to attach to make a gathered skirt. So I'm just going to use that width and then cut the length, being the length I want it to be plus the hem allowance at the bottom and seam allowance at the top, and then cut exactly the same thing again, which will probably just nicely use up the rest of this fabric. So I've just folded the fabric in half so that it's meeting at almost the shortest point, and then this is just an easy way to get the same length on both of them. And so now I'm just going to pin along this edge just to keep it all in place, and then just trim that and then cut at the top so that I've got my two separate pattern pieces. Now I have my two pattern pieces for the skirt cut out. It's not really the most accurate way of cutting out a straight line, but I think it's going to be good enough for what I'm doing now. I know that at least the top is pretty straight because that's just from when I fold it in half and I just chopped that. The bottom might be a little bit more crooked, but I think it's good enough, and also I can fix that up when I'm doing the hem later anyway. So now it is time to sew. So first up, I have to sew a couple of lines of stitching along the edge that's going to be gathered. I set my width to 0 and my length to as long as it goes. I'm going to sew the first line just in maybe like 5 mil, at least definitely less than 1 centimeter in from the edge, and then I'm going to sew a second line of gathering stitches further down, maybe more like 2 centimeters in. I just like to make sure I have one row that is closer to the edge than the seam allowance and one row that's further down than the seam allowance. So the seam is going to be sewn between the 2 rows of gathering stitches. To make a really nice gather you could do 3, but I find that 2 is plenty, and gathering is not my favorite thing to do in the world, so I like to just get it over and done with anyway. So here we go. Now that I've sewn my 2 gathering stitches onto the first piece of fabric, I will do the exact same to the second. Now I have my gathering stitches sewn on both my pieces of fabric. So now what I will do is I will join the side seams together, making sure that both the gathering stitches are at the top with right sides together, and I'm going to sew a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'll just make sure that I don't get any of the gathering threads caught up in the side seam. And always I've in the past forgotten to change my stitch length back to what it was before and ended up with having to redo the seam because I've got because the stitch length is too long. So make sure to change your stitch length back once you're done sewing the gathering stitches. So yeah, now I'm just going to pin these together and then sew it and do the same on the other side seam as well. So now I have everything ready to gather, and to do this I grab two of the top or either the bottom, it doesn't matter, just two of the two threads but only from one side, and I hold them tight and I just pull the fabric along like this, and try and keep it a bit even, but I'll even it all out later. And so I just pull it along until it's all gathered up. To keep it kind of even, you can start gathering from the other side as well. So I'm gathering from the side seam, so I'll do one like the front and then I'll do the back, and so just gathering all of that all up. And so you can see it's like not evenly spaced and probably too small, but that's fine because we can fix that up later. So that's one side done, and now I'll do the other side. So it's a couple of hours later. My little cameraman Wilbur needed some cuddles and now he's having a nap, so I'm back to it. I have tried on my top and I just put a pin where I want the skirt part to attach to. I don't want to actually cut it yet, just in case something goes wrong. I can't go back once I've cut it. So I will cut it once the skirt has been attached. I'll put this upside down and then I'll have the skirt part inside out so that the right sides are together, hanging down from that point, and I will start attaching it. I think I might just put some more pins just to mark the line of where I want the skirt to attach to. I'm just going to use those pins that I just placed in to get my skirt lined up. So I'm going to pin the side seams together. I'm going to assume that the seam is going to stitch like just a little bit down from that first row of gathering stitches. So that's where I'm going to line up the pins that I just put in with. I'm just going to do the two side seams to begin with, and then we'll start distributing the gathers. So it looks like my gathers on this side are a little bit too tight, so that's the better way to do it. So I'm just going to actually just pull that until it kind of is tight, so then I know it's exactly the right amount of length. It's just the gathers haven't been distributed yet. So now I will tie off now that I know that we've got the right overall width, I'm going to just tie off all of those gathering stitches so that it doesn't shuffle around anymore while I'm distributing the gathers. So just tie that off at that end and do the same on this end. Okay, so that's done. Now I just distribute these gathers so that they're evenly spaced around here. So that's pretty well evenly distributed. You can be really particular and do this really thoroughly if you want, but that looks good enough to me. So now I'm going to pin the center back to the center back of the skirt, again using that pin I just put in to know where to line that up. Normally this would be easier because you'd know where the end of the bodice piece is meant to be, but because I'm shortening this and I don't want to pre-cut it, it's a little bit trickier. So I'm just going to sort of lie it flat and just make sure it looks like it's pretty well straight, and then I'm going to go in and pin. I like to pin perpendicular to the stitch, to the seam when I'm doing gathering stitches. I don't know why. Every other time I pin parallel to the line of stitching, but not when I'm gathering for some reason. I just feel like maybe it holds the gathers better. So now the back is attached, and I do exactly the same with the front. So I wouldn't normally try on a dress yet at this point when the skirt is just pinned on, especially because I did pin it on vertically. The skirt is starting to slip down the pins a bit, but I just wanted to quickly try it on to see if I was happy with the placement of where the skirt is sitting in relation to the bodice. And it looks like it's a bit lower at the back, but I'm actually okay with that, I think. And yeah, it has slipped down a bit, so it will sit up a little bit higher, but I think I'm pretty happy with where that's sitting, kind of just on my waist. So that's good. The length I think is good because obviously this is unhemmed, so I want to do like a pretty wide hem, so I think it'll end up being about there, which I think is great. So now time to sew it on. It's the next day and I am about to finish the dress. So I'm at the ironing board because I'm just going to press all of the seams, and I'm going to press the side seam as well. You'll notice I haven't finished the side seams, but that's because I use the entire width of the fabric. The side seams are the selvage, so I don't really need to finish those, but I'll press those side seams. And then while I'm here, I'm also going to press the hem. So I'm just going to turn the hem up and press that. I like to press my hems before sewing because it just means that it's a lot easier. I probably can do it with no pins possibly then. And then, yeah, and then we're almost done. all the pressing done. So back to the sewing machine. First up, I'm stitching the hem. Because I pressed it first, I'm not going to even pin it, so I am just going for it. Hem's done, so now I'm going to tidy up the waist seam. So you can see here, I've still got the excess from the shirt. So what I'm going to first of all do is I'm going to just trim off the shirt to be at about the same length as the gathered skirt part of the seam, unpick the gathering stitches, and then use my overlocker to finish that seam. Now I'm just taking out the gathering thread. Now I'm just going to overlock the waist seam. And last but not least, I'm just going to edge stitch along the waist seam, just on the bodice side, catching the seam allowance behind it. This isn't a necessary step, I just think it finishes it off nicely, and it just makes sure that everything sits nice and flat and you don't get that seam allowance sort of bulking or like hanging the wrong way. And just like that, I'm finished transforming my shirt that I wasn't wearing very much into a dress that I think I'll wear heaps. Will woke up just as I was finishing the last seam, so he is going to join me for ending the video. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this dress turned out. I think that I'm going to get heaps more wear out of it. As you can see, it's really easy to add a gathered skirt to any top to turn it into a dress. So I hope this video helped you see how you can turn any blouse into a dress. And I'll see you again next time with another video. Bye!